Today, we're exploring a question that is changing the way many clinicians, coaches, and healing professionals think about chronic pain and illness. What if some symptoms are not signs that the body's broken, but signals that the nervous system is overwhelmed? My guest today is Georgia Thelen, a certified nutritionist, hypnotist, energy healer, and pain reprocessing therapy coach who helps people recover from chronic pain and neuroplastic symptoms through nervous system regulation, somatic practices, and brain rewiring. George's journey into this work wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. After developing long COVID and a cascade of chronic symptoms, she found herself searching for answers in a medical system that had plenty of labels but few solutions. What ultimately shifted her path was discovering the connection between fear, stress, the nervous system, and the experience of pain itself. And if you've been following me and the progression of my work, you'll know that this is my hot spot right now. So in this conversation, we explore neuroplastic symptoms, the fear-pain cycle, nervous system regulation, pain reprocessing therapy, and the role that unresolved stress and emotions may play in chronic illness and persistent pain. So whether you struggle with chronic pain yourself, work with clients who do, or are simply curious about the powerful relationship between the brain, the body, and the nervous system, I think you'll find this conversation both fascinating and hopeful. And I will say that as I listened back to the conversation, what stands out to me is that healing often begins not when we fight our symptoms harder, but when we become curious about what they're trying to communicate. And this very much aligns with the other podcast episodes that I've been doing over the last couple months in terms of leaning into embodiment and listening to our bodies and their wisdom, opposed to pushing through or ignoring. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Spiritually Curious Therapist, where science, spirit, and the self come together in the art of healing. I'm Jody Silverman, psychotherapist, Reiki master, and fellow seeker. Here we explore how presence, compassion, and nervous system wisdom helps us reconnect with the heart, the body, and the soul. Hello, and welcome back to the Spiritually Curious Therapist. Today we have with us Georgia Thelen. Georgia is a certified nutritionist, hypnotist, energy healer, and pain reprocessing therapy coach who helps clients address their chronic pain through nervous system regulation, somatics, and brain rewiring. I am really excited to have Georgia on the show today. She and I met through a pain reprocessing therapy Facebook group. I am, as some of you, newly trained in pain reprocessing therapy, and Georgia has been in the field for a while. So I'm really excited to pick her brain and hear all about the ways in which she is helping folks with chronic pain and chronic illness. Welcome to the show, Georgia.
Thank you so much, Jody. Thanks for having me on today. I too am very excited for our chat today.
Absolutely. So why don't we just start with your story? How did you come into working with chronic pain and what we call neuroplastic symptoms?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to share my story. In 2020, I actually started my small business, not based on chronic pain healing, but actually on mental illness or mental wellness rather as a whole, and actually started in nutrition and was doing so good with that, was finding some success, was building an online practice. And then I got COVID, actually, which so many of us did, and thus started the long train of long COVID for me and mystery symptoms that so many around the world have been dealing with for several years now at this point. And from there, it was just me going through the medical system and really trying to figure out, wow, why do I have all this pain? Why am I having so much chronic illness and POTS and all this TBI and all this crazy stuff? And finally, a couple of years ago, I decided it's probably not something wrong with my body, right? And started really looking into the nervous system and what the heck do we do for this type of pain. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, all of these labels, right? And no one really could give me anything past pain medication. They wanted to prescribe antidepressants. Am I allowed to say drug names? I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Low dose naltrexone. I'm like, it's just not for me. So eventually I, thank God, found pain reprocessing therapy. And I decided, gosh, there's only a couple of providers in my entire state. So I thought, hey, I'm doing the nutrition thing already. Why don't I add another modality? Yeah, you're shaking your head. I think it's just such a natural thing for us to do as healers and carers, right? So, anywho, yeah. And so I hopped in the pain reprocessing therapy certification program and used it to heal myself and chronic pain of what I think about 4 years at that point. So, yeah, that's the short version of my story.
So there's so many points there that I want to pull out. Maybe starting with COVID. So a lot of people are experiencing what we call long COVID, which is really a combination of symptoms that can't necessarily be explained otherwise. And they may ultimately result in things like POTS, chronic pain, inflammation, all sorts of different things happening in the body as a result. Given what you now know, do you have an explanation for what's happening in this context of long COVID?
I am not sure that I have the correct letters after my name to provide an explanation, but I can definitely say that I think at the root of a lot of this long COVID, unexplained symptoms, regardless of what the label is, put the diagnostic label that's put on them. I think so much of it is rooted in this chronic stress that all of us carry, maybe not all of us, but the majority of us carry as humans. And I think that when your nervous system is dysregulated and we're constantly intaking so much from our environment, our food, our air, our cell phones, our TVs, there's no way that we can outbeat all these crazy illnesses that are coming up and so many other things when we're constantly being bombarded with things that are dysregulating us. So I would say that I believe that yes, more nervous system regulation and less stuff, less things in life that are coming in would certainly help so many people with these mystery illnesses such as long COVID, POTS. I think a lot of people, once they are able to see it from this side, this brain body based side, so many people are able to heal themselves. Yeah, so I think that in itself, I think says a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really do believe, and I know this is totally anecdotal. I'm not sure that I have
Mm-hmm.
the right letters after
Right.
my name either, but I am noticing that a lot more people are experiencing these illnesses post-COVID. And we
Mhm.
can't ignore, although most of us would like to forget, we can't ignore not only the trauma to our body as a result of having the illness, for those of us who did have COVID at least once, but also the social and environmental trauma that occurred with being in a shutdown, being separated from friends and family, where everyone
Mhm.
wearing masks, the fear that was everywhere as a result of the media and no one knowing what was going on and all the people dying. It was a lot. And I don't know that we as a society have quite yet fully admitted to the level of trauma that we all experienced during that time.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. Yes. And everything that happened that you mentioned there, all surrounded around one thing, which is fear, which is the main driver for these neuroplastic symptoms.
Perfect segue. Okay,
Yeah,
so
perfect segue.
tell us about fear and tell us about neuroplastic symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you were just saying, there's a lot of catalysts for fear in our lives currently in the past several years. And when these things are popping up. Oh, it's a new thing to fear. It's a new thing to fear. It's a new thing to fear from the news, from social media, from, again, your environment, the air, the food we eat, right? It's all coming in. And I think for so many people that I know, at least, COVID was a really big point of fear. Not only that, but also a big awakening, I would say, to, oh my gosh, wait, there might be things in our food. Wait, there might be things there. I feel like that was like a big point for everyone. Really, oh no, I really should be doing better. And that's just more fear that we're not doing good enough, right? Or, oh gosh, there's something in my food. I need to eat organic now. And it's such a long rabbit hole that we can go under. And so when we're constantly bombarded with these things, as the fear can take over, and for some of us lucky folks, it can manifest as pain in the body. The fear, the stress, of course, all the life things, right? And so then you really get into that fear pain cycle that I myself am familiar with. I know you have become familiar with it as well, Jody, yourself, through the pain reprocessing training. But yeah, basically, once you start having fear, or sorry, once you start having pain, rather, and you will start fearing it. And unfortunately, that is the thing that actually prolongs the pain and this cycle for so many folks. The fear that, oh no, is my pain going to pop up again? How long will it last? How severe will it be? Will I be able to work? Will I be able to take care of my children, etc., etc.? Again, a very long, deep rabbit hole that you can catastrophize and spiral right down if you're really in the thick of it and you're mentally dysregulated. So, yeah, that is the main driver here for those neuroplastic symptoms.
And so I think what I'm hearing is that fear can manifest itself in our body and in our mind in several different ways. So for some of us, it's conscious, where we can say, yes, I feel afraid of A, B, C, D,
Mm-hmm.
or notice when we feel fear or anxiety in our body as a sensation, but that it also can show up in our system through our nervous system when something unfamiliar enters our system. And it can enter our system through food that we eat, it can enter our system through a virus, right? Through a vaccine, even. And
Mm-hmm.
that when our system is hypervigilant already, as it was, for example, during COVID, when other things start entering it, it just reinforces the fear in our system.
Yes,
Is
thank you
that
for putting it so perfectly. Yes,
okay?
absolutely. Yes. Yes, the more dysregulated we become, the more folks who are more predisposed to these neuroplastic symptoms. Yes, the more that we're taking into our symptoms or the system, the more that our symptoms are going to start popping up. And for many, it's not just pain. You are absolutely correct.
Yeah, yeah, and in all sorts of different ways. And I think the one of the things about what in our community is often called mind body symptoms is that they can be very strange, and sometimes the symptoms often are, so much so that it's hard to wrap one's head around that they're being created by the brain. As I listen back to this conversation, what strikes me is that we're talking about much more than pain here. We're talking about what happens when a nervous system spends years trying to protect us, and whether that protection shows up as anxiety, fatigue, chronic pain, rumination, or other symptoms. The invitation is often the same, and that is, can we create enough safety to listen differently? So let me pause there and rewind.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier when you were sharing your story that there was a moment that you said to yourself, there's not something wrong with my body. And that's when you started to learn about and use pain reprocessing therapy. How did you even come to that conclusion with all of those symptoms that there was not something wrong with your body?
I think that, like many who have discovered somatics or The Way Out or any of Dr. Sarno's books or Pain Reprocessing Therapy. So many of us have tried everything.
Mhm.
Anyone I talk to that ends up having neuroplastic pain or symptoms in general, they're like, oh my gosh, I just went down the medical route, spent hundreds or thousands, and we all have the same story. And I would say that's definitely my story. Yeah, then I eventually started, I think I Googled, is there a talk therapy for chronic pain or something like that? And that's how I found pain reprocessing therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you got to a point where you were like, I am doing all the things.
All of the things, Jody, every
I know.
single thing. And that was prolonging the cycle. Yes.
Sure. That's a big piece, right? Because the
Yeah.
more that we pay attention to the symptoms, the more
Yeah.
they keep going, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to do that because it is human nature to want to fix something that is
Hmm.
uncomfortable. That's the purpose of pain to begin with, right? The purpose
Yeah.
of pain is for the way our brain and nervous system lets us know that something is wrong. So we often, like in our training, they always give the example of if you're out for a run and you twist your ankle and it starts hurting, you're not going to be able to keep running. And that's to protect you because you don't want to do more damage. So,
Of
I mean,
course.
pain is super important. The problem or the challenge is when we get to mind-body syndrome, is
Mhm.
that sometimes that pain can persist even though whatever may have been structurally wrong, and it doesn't always have to start with a structural, but it can, is has long been healed. So the smoke alarm is still going off even though the fire is out.
Sometimes, in some cases, been out for many years, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love, and I wish I was good enough to be able to remember all the different parts of the brain, but I think it's really important for our listeners to understand that acute pain shows up in a particular part of the brain
Yes.
as a way of warning us. You put your hand on a hot stove, it's going to hurt like hell because if you left your hand there, you would not have any skin left, right? However, chronic pain and symptoms, they light up in other parts of the brain, including the parts of our brain that regulate emotions, memory, and
Mhm.
meaning making, which I thought was really fascinating as
Yeah.
well. So I think that's important. So when, as we're having this discussion for people to understand, we're not talking about acute structural pain as a result of an injury or a virus. We're talking about the pain and symptoms that persist long after those things have healed.
Yeah. Six plus months.
Six
I
plus
would
months.
say.
That's the number they tend to give us.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we're talking about mind-body syndrome and the brain creating the pain, can you say a little bit more about like how does that work? How does the brain create pain? If my knee hurts, it's my knee that's hurting.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. So I would say earlier we touched on some people are just gifted and they receive these things. And I would say that is still what holds true for who is going to develop somatic pain or mind body syndrome. I think there's certainly a genetic predisposition to it, right? Some of us, or if you have a parent who had mind body syndrome, a lot of times you'll see fibromyalgia come down a family tree in women, right? Not that all fibromyalgia is mind body based, but some of it is, right? So if you had a parent, you were genetically predisposed. I think a lot of childhood trauma, ACE really comes into this. Pain is not discriminatory at all. And you could be a billionaire and you could have chronic pain, right? And you very well may because you're very stressed out or you had a rough childhood and you never really know, right? But yeah, so I would say these things after so many big T's, little T's. For everyone, their story is very different, right? For me, I had long COVID and TBI and a car accident. And I think for so many people, it's just very different. And if you have the genetic factors and environmental and life factors, you may be one of the chosen ones, right?
And that being said, As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about how mind-body syndrome is something that we all experience on some level. I think everybody can relate to having a headache after a long,
Sure.
stressful day, right?
So,
Or your belly being in knots or having butterflies in your
hmm
belly when you're having to go take a test or do something that you're
hmm
nervous about, right? So everybody has somatic sensations in their
for sure.
bodies in response to their environment, having no structural
Yeah.
reason for it. And I think that's really important because when we start talking about this with folks, and that's going to be my next question, which is like, how do you introduce this to people have been, who believe and have been told that there is something wrong with them? It's hard for people to make that shift to it, and I want to be clear, it's this idea of there being something wrong. Neuroplastic pain is something wrong.
Mhm.
It's your brain creating pain as a result of there being too much hypervigilance in your system. But that's different from there being a structural problem that requires surgery and medications and other ongoing expensive treatments.
Medical approach.
Medical
Yeah.
approach, say expensive, but also the idea of some of those treatments being really invasive.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a question in there. I'll pull it out. The question is, how do you start to talk to people about the pain being real and brain generated? And especially folks who don't want to hear that their pain is being generated by their brain and not because there's something wrong in their body.
Yes, absolutely. For me, I have been on both sides of it, and now I can see how it is hard for people to come around that, oh, it might not be structural, because I think that we grow up, we're told, oh, you hurt your knee, you break your ankle, whatever, you go to the hospital. You take that medical approach. And that's what we've all learned and been taught. And to be breaking away from that or having a different belief system can be very jarring for some folks, definitely. So, for a lot of folks, if we're just starting to talk about neuroplastic pain, what is PRT, pain reprocessing, if they have something structural, especially if they've had it their whole lives, usually, you can usually find it simpler to ask them to come around to the idea that some components of their pain may be neuroplastic, especially again, if it's something they've lived with. And anyone with any kind of pain, I usually ask them, do you wake up in the morning and dread your pain? And the answer is usually yes. And I say, so does the pain usually start shortly after that? And the answer is usually yes, unfortunately. And from there, people are usually like, okay, you've made a couple good points here. Or some people, like we talked about earlier, they've tried everything. So when you say, yeah, this might be brain generated, they're like, that could make sense. Or I have my neuroplastic symptom questionnaire. I'll have it out or I'll hand it to them, or we'll obviously go back and forth. Do you have that? Do you experience? And a few questions in there usually. Oh, I think I'm going to check off every single one of these now that we're going through them.
Yeah, I find that super helpful. And that's the idea of building an evidence list that you can
Yeah,
keep coming back to remind
absolutely.
you. What are so just out of curiosity, because some of our listeners might want to know, what are some of the questions that you ask around whether they're neuroplastic?
On our questionnaire.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of people, right off, number one, do you have multiple symptoms that are different in type? So, back pain and fatigue, or migraine and IBS and knee pain, or some, you'll usually have two or three concurrent, right?
Yeah.
So, I had the long COVID symptoms like fibromyalgia, I had joint pain, and I had back pain and neck pain. So it was all over, but also localized. Oh, and I also had migraine. I had migraines too, and vertigo. Sorry,
Oh.
I could actually probably go on, Jody. So we should just, the more I think about it, so we should just cut it off there. But anyway, so that one is usually relatable for people. Yeah, have your doctors or other practitioners completed diagnostic testing without finding a definite cause for your symptoms?
That's a big one.
That's a huge one, absolutely. Do you have a history of prior symptoms in your childhood, college 30s, etc.? Like chronic pain, anxiety, depression, digestive or bladder problems. There's a few other ones. Usually people, if they're adults, they can relate to having something, one or two of those in their childhood or teen years, typically. You want me to keep going?
Maybe one more.
Okay, yeah. Do you tend to frequently check on, worry about research, think of ways to escape, feel very frustrated by, or dread your symptoms and their triggers throughout the day? And I'd say that's a pretty big one usually for people as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think I've got 18 or 19 here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that is really helpful. And the idea of ruling in neuroplastic symptoms. And I love what you're saying. And I think it's really helpful and really important. And that is that you can have mixed symptoms, right? You can have both structural symptoms that are a result of something structural and symptoms that are neuroplastic, and or you could have structural symptoms that are exacerbated by your brain, right?
Yes.
So in some sense, pain reprocessing therapy is helpful for any kind of pain.
I think so. And honestly, I think that the regulation portions and the somatic portions, especially if you're doing any positive tracking or hypnosis, positive induction, positive affection, just induction with that, you can have so many good results. I think that's good for anyone. I think that everybody should regulate their nervous system and do their shadow work, get in touch with their inner child, and all of this good stuff that obviously is comes after the pain or maybe before, depending on where you're at in your journey. But I think that yes, those tools are so helpful for anyone. And I agree with you with saying that yes, anyone can have structural or purely neuroplastic or a mix of, and yes, but definitely regulation is helpful, I believe, for everyone. Would you agree?
100%. And again, another great segue. So let's go there. Let's talk a little bit about the importance of nervous system regulation when you are healing from chronic pain and chronic illness. And maybe just starting with, from your perspective, what do you mean when we talk about nervous system regulation?
Yeah, for sure. So when I talk about regulation now here myself to clients, I'm speaking about regulating the nervous system, stimulating the vagus nerve, waking that back up, bringing your body back to calm homeostasis, I would say. I think that it's maybe become a little bit of a buzzword for people. Yeah, so when I'm talking about regulation, I'm not talking about just doing yoga and meditating. This is for sure a full comprehensive. You need to do at least a little bit of work every day, hopefully, to bring your body back online.
Yeah, and I agree. There's a lot of talk about nervous system regulation out there, and it seems to be the new thing. And there's all these gadgets you can buy and ways that you regulate your nervous system. And I don't know that everyone has a really clear idea of what that means, especially when we're talking about it in the context of health and
Mhm.
wellness. And consistency is really
Mhm.
important. And the idea of a regulated nervous system is one that is flexible and has the ability to address all of the needs from the environment, both external and internal, and come
Mhm.
back to, like you said, that homeostasis baseline window of tolerance. There's all different ways.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the tools that you might use for help people use for nervous system regulation. And then let's move more into PRT specifically. And what are some of the main tools that you use in PRT? So starting with, because I also believe everything starts with nervous system regulation. If your nervous system doesn't feel safe, it's going to keep that fear pain cycle going no matter what you do. And so you got to start there.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, definitely agree with that. Yeah. So typically with the clients I see, we do need to bring them down a notch or two usually. I work with a lot of moms, and so as moms, we're mostly stressed out and overwhelmed. And that's like being a hashtag mom life. But does it have to be that way? Yeah. Or rather, should it be that way? Yeah, so a lot of times I am starting with a few basic tools. At the beginning, there is usually a little breath work, mini meditations, I like to call them. We'll maybe do like bilateral, like butterfly tapping, like what one may do, like during EMDR, for instance, or EFT tapping. So emotional freedom technique and tapping those spots. Honestly, it looks different for everyone just based on where they're at. Yeah, I do a lot of vagus nerve toning stimulation with very simple exercises. None of this is overwhelming. All of this, you're doing it throughout your day. It takes you 5 minutes or less because with the nervous system, you want to be using and introducing these tools very slowly so that the body and the system does not continue to get more overwhelmed. We do not want you to go into freeze or shut down mode. That's definitely not the goal. So everything is very gentle at the pace that the client needs. We're only giving out, at least I only give out 2 or 3 tools at each appointment. I'm seeing clients maybe 2 or 3 times a month, and that's it. They get a little homework. That's not stressful. But I always tell people I'm not going to give you a magic pill, but I will give you the tools that will help you feel much better. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And what I often tell people too is this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Change is not going to happen overnight. And a little bit of consistency over time is what's going to make the difference. And it's like brushing your teeth. You can't just brush your teeth for 1 hour a week. You have to do 2 minutes every day, 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And this is the same, the nervous system work is
Mhm.
exactly the same because our nervous system is constantly being bombarded with input from our environment, the same way our teeth are being bombarded with food and drink,
Mhm.
all those other things. And so it's like we're having to tune that instrument, our nervous system, on an ongoing basis. And so I really love what you're saying and those small techniques that people can use. And I do the same thing. Little easy things, orienting, looking around
Mhm.
your space, taking in something that feels good to your eyes, noticing your feet on the ground, taking a few breaths in a certain way. Like all these things we just weave into your day and it keeps it keeps your window of tolerance larger and your nervous system thus more regulated. So yeah, I love what you're saying. Okay, so nervous system regulation, creating safety in the system, widening that window of tolerance so we don't react so strongly to
Mhm.
what we perceive as threats. Then we move into pain reprocessing therapies. What is pain reprocessing therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, pain reprocessing therapy is an evidence based treatment for chronic pain. And so, that uses tools to quite literally rewire the brain through safety reappraisal, positive thoughts and feelings, mindfulness. Obviously, is our main tool is somatic tracking, but I personally think that you can do so much. There's just so many tools that can go into it. But yeah, somatic tracking is the main tool that we use.
Yeah, I love somatic tracking. So the idea, right? So pain
Mhm.
reprocessing therapy,
Mhm.
the idea is that we help the brain reprocess the sensation of pain through a lens of safety rather than fear.
Mhm. Of course.
Is that
Yes. Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yes.
Did I make that up or did I learn that? I don't really remember,
No,
but
you
yes.
definitely learned that.
Okay, so this goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of once pain or symptoms shift into this chronic phase, what we're potentially dealing with is is a brain and a nervous system that is keeping the sensation going and turning the volume up on the sensation as well because it is stuck in a protected nervous system state, and that it just keeps feeding on itself because we feel the symptom, frustration, fear, all the things show up in our system. And then our
Mhm.
brain is like, ah, yes, threat, more pain, more symptoms.
Yeah.
And so the pain reprocessing therapy helps interrupt that loop, bring more safety into the system. And eventually the symptoms and the pain lessen. Although what we are taught is that all of these techniques have to be outcome independent, meaning we engage in them as a practice so that we can learn a new way to relate to our symptoms rather than with the goal of getting rid of our symptoms.
Yeah, this is definitely all about curiosity. And yes, and approaching this from that lens. And when we flip that lens to one of, yes, safety, positivity, surrounded by care and support during this bond that we've built during PRT, absolutely, we are able to reframe it and rewire those neural pathways in the brain to, yes, to lessen and sometimes even completely dissipate chronic pain for people.
Yeah, and so even as I'm listening to you and myself say this, there's this part of me that's showing up and saying, how is this not me gaslighting myself?
I
What?
love that. It
Yeah,
can feel like that sometimes. It can feel like that sometimes.
yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that, right? Because what we're saying to people is, okay, we know that this hurts. We know that you have pain in your body, and we're asking you to be with it and to tell yourself that you're safe, even though it doesn't feel safe.
Yeah, I think again, it goes back to doing a little groundwork with some people before you hop into the PRT and the somatic tracking and all of that. I think that, yeah, it does feel like gaslighting at some points. But once you're in it, it doesn't really seem like that. But again, on the forefront, when you're thinking, what is this lady saying? This is in my brain, it's in my body. But once you're in it, I think usually things typically tend to click. But yeah, just as for me, a coach, for you as a therapist, just remaining there with the client. And sometimes the forewarning, this may feel a little weird. It might seem a little strange when we're in it, but just go with it. Remind them to take deep breaths and again, yes, staying removed from the pain, right? And just staying positive and yes, being detached from the outcome, I would definitely say is the hardest thing for people. Yeah, because it does feel a little gaslighty, I suppose. But what's a different term we could use? It's just a reframe. It's just a reframe, folks.
It is. Yeah, and I use that term because it does come up a lot, especially for people who have been in the world of chronic pain, chronic illness for a long time and have felt
Yeah,
gaslit by doctors.
from doctors.
So we want to be very sensitive to that and
Yeah.
also understand that this is a process. There is a learning curve here. And even as I was listening to you and I'm like imagining this, I'm thinking about some of my clients and the work
Mhm.
we've done. It's really about not trying to convince yourself, which is what gaslighting is,
Yeah.
trying to convince you that your reality is not what your reality is. It's more about supporting your
Yeah.
body, creating safety so that you can appraise whether these symptoms and pain are warning you of something that's structural in your body and therefore you do need treatment versus it being stuck in this loop.
Sure.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The relationship with your provider, whether it's a
Hmm.
coach or a therapist who's working with you through pain reprocessing therapy, is so important. And I know a lot of people, they talk about folks who have read Dr. Sarno's book and have
Hmm.
cured their pain on their own. And
Hmm.
some people have done that,
Yeah.
and that's great. Some people, once
Mhm.
they read the book, they're like, the pain is automatically
Yeah.
just gone.
Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, gone. That I don't think that's most people, but that does happen for some people. And so having a provider that can really hold that space for you
Hmm.
and create that safety, I think is super important.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so I have a last question about all of
Okay.
this, and
Yeah.
it's an important one. So you and I both mentioned Dr. Sarno a couple times,
Hmm.
and for those who don't know Dr. Sarno, and correct me if I miss anything here or say anything wrong, Dr. Sarno was a physician back in the 1980s, who was one of the first people who really pioneered this work around body-mind syndrome. And
Hmm.
back then, he believed that all chronic pain was caused by unresolved and unexpressed emotion. And if
Yes.
you read some of his book, it's heavy psychoanalytic. There's a lot of Freudian stuff in there. And we now know that with the advances in neuroscience, that
Hmm.
although there were some parts of his belief that may have been maybe outdated, he was on the right track, right?
Yeah.
And so Dr. Sarno is the father of
Mind body medicine.
yeah,
Yeah.
mind body
Mhm.
medicine in this field. And so when I say he was on the right track, there is a connection between unexpressed or unresolved emotion and chronic pain. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes, I can talk a little bit about that. Sure. Yes, I would say that I agree with you. He was definitely on the right track for sure. Obviously, in the community today, his daughter is continuing his study and she has her course with Nicole Sachs and all that good stuff. And they are still very much so spreading the TMS message out there. And a lot of their work really, like their course fully focuses on the emotional side of neuroplastic pain, whereas pain reprocessing is just teaching us really how it can manifest in the body and then how to resolve it, right? So I'm happy to share what I know and what the things that I believe. I would say that yes, for many of us, the trapped emotions can definitely lead to bodily problems, whether it's pain, chronic illness, gosh, crazy things like you see, ulcerative colitis, and stress and trapped emotions can do crazy things to the body, I would say. I could really get on a soapbox about this one for sure. Trying to keep it succinct. Yes, I do you do emotional awareness?
I
EAT?
I do, I'm not trained in emotional awareness, which for people who are listening, there's pain reprocessing therapy, PRT, and then there's emotional awareness and activation therapy,
Expression.
expression, thank you, EAET, right? Which
Yeah,
one is it? So I'm not trained in it. I am familiar with it. And I think just through my training as a therapist, I do my own version of it
totally.
because that's what we do as therapists. But it really is the idea, it's based on the idea that emotions are sensations generated by the brain, just like pain. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, we know MRIs show that they light up the same part of the brain. It's like the same
Mhm.
same thing. And that when we are taught to repress those emotions and not allow them to complete, that energy gets trapped in our body and can express
Mhm.
through physical
Mhm.
manifestations. And so a lot of people have found relief from chronic pain and chronic illness through doing emotional awareness and expression therapy or some version of that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so definitely agree. I'm glad that you are also familiar with it. Yes, I would love to get trained in it. I think the classes are booked out
They
like
are, I know,
6
I'm on a
years or
waiting
something.
list.
Yeah, great. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Yeah, so I would say that alone, and just like you said, so many people have found success with EAT, PRT. I think that shows us a host of evidence that trapped emotions in the body can really lead to a down spiral of so many other chronic illness and other impairments and disorders that can plague the human body for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. We are just about at time. That went really fast. I feel like
Sure
we could talk
did.
for hours more.
Definitely.
Before we wrap up, Georgia, is there anything that I did not ask you about that you would like to share with the audience?
I know for any listeners who are more curious about mind body medicine, I would definitely recommend reading Dr. Sarno's work or his daughter, Nicole Sachs, Alan Gordon, who wrote The Way Out, and he's the creator of Pain Reprocessing Therapy. Please check out the Boulder Back Pain study if you are interested in seeing the research behind pain reprocessing therapy. Oh, what else? Oh, I would certainly recommend anyone who's into mindfulness or wants to get into somatics or nervous system regulation to definitely start reaching out, trying to find resources. I really love, oh, what do I use? No, I can't think of the book name. Anyway, imagery for I think it's imagery for healing the individual. It's written by a medical doctor, but another mind body medicine. And that book's probably a good 25, 30 years old. But yeah, there's so many more great things that can be discovered in the world of somatic healing and neuroplastic healing. I would definitely encourage anyone listening who's interested, of course, to do more research because it is a really cool field and an awesome way of healing.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll put all of that information in the show notes so that people can access it easily, as well as your website and your socials, so that if people want to learn more about what you're doing or connect with you, they can certainly do that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jody. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And thank you for being here today, Georgia.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a joy talking.